to talk about the launch of our new digital product, UFC Fight Pass. As many of you know who are familiar with the UFC, we have been very focused on growing this brand and creating a global combat sport, or bringing our events all over the world. Since we bought the company, we've done 38 events in what we call international markets. That's outside of North America. All of those events have been incredibly successful. For the most part, all sold out. Now what that means is that we've created a significant amount of demand in places like Europe, in places like Asia, Australia, the Middle East. And the issue that we have as a company is we feel like that over the past 5 or 6 years, we have not been doing a good job meeting the demand of what our customer base is in these markets. So in order to take care of that, what we decided early last year is that we were going to add shows into these markets, which we've already announced. We're going to add 6 shows in Asia and 6 shows in Europe in order to meet that demand, okay? Now, that's important for us because we feel like in order to grow the sport and find new talent, we have to have this level of consistency in these markets. There's some markets that we've been to in the past and been very successful, like Abu Dhabi in the Middle East, Dublin, Ireland, and it takes us literally 3 or 4 years to get back to those markets, leaving this demand unfulfilled. So that's really the reason for expanding the number of events. In addition to that, if you think about the fan base in those markets, even if you think about tonight, obviously tonight's kind of the pinnacle of all the big events that we've done so far. The main event probably won't go off until about 9 o'clock Las Vegas time, which is what, roughly about 3 or 4 o'clock in the UK. I mean, you have to be a pretty hardcore fan to stay up that late or wake up that early to watch that fight. So what we need to do in order to grow this sport and grow our brand is bring great fights in prime time into these markets so we can then broadcast those fights on big networks in those markets in their prime time. Now, as we've decided to do that, and that is moving forward for 2014 and beyond, now we have to figure out how do we distribute these products in the United States, in Canada, in this time zone. What we've decided to do is we're launching UFC Fight Pass. All of these fights will be available. The first one, which we'll talk about in more detail, on January 4th, Fight from Singapore will be available on this service, as well as our fight library, which includes not just UFC, but all of the other brands that we have in our fight library, including Pride, Strikeforce, WEC, and so on. As well as a number of other original programming features that we will be developing on this platform that will be bringing behind the scenes to our fan base like no other sport has ever done before. Access like you would never get from any other sports league or sports team for that matter. Now, we've worked very quickly, we've worked very closely with New Line Technology to develop this. And what I want to do now is I'm going to give you a little bit of a flavor of what UFC Fight Pass will offer, and then obviously we'll go through more details, and you'll get a chance to actually look at the service. I think we have it set up in this room. You guys can play around with it and see how the functionality works. But if we could roll the video now, that would be great.
So this thing, like Lorenzo said, kicks off January 4th. Over 150 live fights exclusively here. You can't see these fights anywhere else that are coming up next year. 150 live fights. Over 3,000 individual library fights. Over 500 hours of original programming, including the international tough. So the people from around the world, the only place you'll be able to watch Chael versus Vanderlei from Brazil is on this channel, okay? The only place you'll be able to see it, unless you live in Brazil, there you can watch it, but everybody around the world will be able to watch it here. And obviously, the question I get asked the most is, when are you coming out with the Dark Ages DVDs? Well, there you go. There's all you can watch all those fights. That entire library lives here. Over 500 Pride fights, over 600 WC fights, over 500 Strikeforce fights, and then all the fights from Affliction and WFA. So you have access to everything. The biggest, not only the biggest fight library in MMA in the world, but the key to this whole thing is being able to get all these other original live fights only here, and the stuff from Tough from around the world. So I'm going to turn it over. This is kind of, you guys all know Marshall Zelaznik. This is his baby. This is what he's been working on, and he'll fill you in more.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. It's really exciting. As many of you know, I headed up the international business for some time, but recently transitioned into the Chief Content Officer role. And as we started to evolve that role, it became very clear that the dream that Lorenzo and Dana, or the vision, had was that we as a company had to evolve with the technology. And as I dug in and I got to work with Edward Muncie, who heads up our technology group, we had this amazing machine that we worked with New Line on that was really untapped. If any of you had been on UFC.tv before, you would have seen free content, you would have seen transactional content. So we basically had this thoroughbred there that we thought there might be a better way to utilize this. So with the convergence of the international strategy to deliver the primetime live events with all the content that we had been created over the years, had acquired over the years, it seemed the perfect time to get this product launched. So you know, UFC Fight Pass will live under the UFC.tv umbrella. It will be a subscription service. We do have a free trial that will take you up until March 1st for everyone to go into the service and play with it. The service is live and up and running now, so we encourage everyone to log in. We do have 4 computers in the back for the press to take a tour through it. I think you'll be impressed with the girth of the content. The price is $9.99 starting March 1st. And one of the things that we're most proud of is that this is a real convergence of all of our great content and great technology. With all the streaming movie services out there and the way our consumers consume content, we think this is the best way to deliver that content. We're initially launching the service in the US, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand, but over time we will launch this worldwide. We'll figure out the best way to get this distributed. And the beauty with the UFC, as opposed to any of the other sports properties out there, is our fights have shelf life. If you've been a boxing fan, how many times can you watch Ali Frazier? The same is true with the UFC. Our content has shelf life. It drives big ratings everywhere around the world, whether it's live or whether it's taped. And what this service will do, it will allow fans to take their own personal journey with a fighter or with the sport. We'll have years and years of content. You'll be able to track fighters' progress through their career. And we're very proud of the curation that you'll see because there is so much content. We put a team together with Dana's help, with Lorenzo, with Joe Silva's help, and with other people within the company. We have curated the content in a way that we think it'll be user-friendly and allow people to embark on that journey. So we'll open it now up to questions for everybody, and just wait until you have a microphone in your hand and we'll take your questions.
A question about how this related to the ongoing relationship with Fox. Was there any conversation that had to be had within in terms of the fact that now a large amount of content, especially live content, would be hosted on the digital platform?
No, you know, we've had obviously UFC.tv for a while now where we've streamed content, streamed our pay-per-views for a long time, so obviously they were aware of that. These fights are outside of the package that they purchased 2 years ago. So, no, I mean, it's a completely separate offering, something we've been focused on for a long time. Understanding and knowing that, you know, content is moving over the top in a lot of different ways. And, you know, we saw the success that a lot of the different services were having. And essentially what we created here is Netflix for the fight fan.
And Lorenzo, you also talked about the fact that because of these international events, you felt like you might be under-servicing those primary markets. It stands to reason that hardcores are going to follow the UFC wherever it goes. Was there any market research that told you guys that there could be any limited downside domestically as far as what you might lose from people who might watch a Fox Sports 1 or Fox Sports 2 event as opposed to the digital platform?
No, I don't. You know, look, at the end of the day, we have product and we're distributing it in various different ways. And we have essentially 3 tiers of product. So we have on the bottom end of the pyramid, we have the Ultimate Fighter. Really, we obviously expose new talent, young kids that haven't been in the UFC yet. On the top end is a fight like tonight, a premium fight that here in the U.S. is distributed on pay-per-view. And then in the middle, we have our UFC Fight Night brand, okay? Been very successful. That's distributed on Fox Sports 1 or on the Fox Broadcast Network, but it's also distributed around the world on various different networks. Seriously, what we're doing is taking that brand and extending it into these different international markets because, once again, the demand is there. We feel like we're not meeting that demand. In addition to that, there's a lot of great young talent that we just haven't been able to get to. We haven't been able to expose, to give these young fighters the opportunity to really kind of prove what they have. So once again, in an effort to build a global sport and extend our brand, we felt like this was the best way to do that. I don't feel like we're going to lose any fans here in the U.S. I think what we're going to have is we're going to have a lot of fans that are very engaged, are going to want to see what happens in some of these fights, maybe see if they can find out who the next John Jones or Johnny Hendricks is going to be. Maybe they emanate from Asia, maybe they're going to emanate from somewhere in Europe. And we're going to have a very, very robust offering for the live events that are going to be shown exclusively on this Fight Pass product. And Dana can talk about that.
Yeah, and the reality